Well, America, you ready to be at war with Venezuela? Because that's what you got. Donald Trump just announced that he's closed the airspace over that country. And because, one, that's a violation of their sovereignty. And number two, because it's being enforced with our military, it constitutes an act of war. So that's where we're at. No congressional oversight, no declaration of war. It's based upon a foundation of lies from saying TDA was a gang connected to Maduro that was wreaking havoc in America, to saying he's a narco trafficker and responsible for drugs coming into the U.S., when in fact he supplies those drugs to Europe. And on top of all that, he just let the former president of Honduras, who brought 400 tons into this country, facing 45 years in prison. He pardoned him. He doesn't give a shit about drugs. So we're starting a war. Don't know why. Nobody knows what's going on. It's going to go bad because if you look at the trajectory into it, it's the worst we've had in modern history. So buckle up.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our breakdowns of the latest political chaos. Now, because apparently 2025 isn't slowing down for any of us. Now, today's topic, it's a spicy one. President Trump is suddenly threatening to invade Venezuela. Yes, invade. From a man who campaigned on no more endless wars, the internet is confused. Venezuela-Americans are freaking out, and the rest of South America is probably double-checking their evaluation bags. So let's dive right into it. Is Donald Trump about to start a new war against the very country he said he had no business interfering with? And even more importantly, why Venezuela and why now? Well, grab your snacks because this story has more twists than a telenovela.
And we need the Americans, the only way out of socialism. I was born in the U.S., but I live in Venezuela.
So I've been going around Cucuta asking people how they feel about what Trump's doing in the Caribbean right now. You as a Venezuelan, a Venezuelan-American, how do you feel about this, or what's your opinion on the take?
I come and try to cross the border with my American passport. I actually feel afraid. There's a lot of tension with Americans and with Trump especially. I support of a bunch of people in Venezuela. I'm not scared to say it that way. And I'm a Venezuelan. We need the Americans, the only way out of socialism. They took our guns when Chavez came into power, and now we cannot get our freedom back.
So when you see someone in the United States, people who oppose Trump and they staunchly oppose, well actually they support Maduro, they support the Bolivarian revolution without having ever met Venezuelans or been to Venezuela, what's your message for those people?
My message to those people, come here to Cucuta and then come cross the border and go to Venezuela and actually live there or be there for a couple months, and you see what a chaos country and what a underdeveloped and a country with a huge potential, how it can be destroyed just with socialism and the communism and a bad political ideology.
So people say Trump's only doing this because he wants to steal the resources of Venezuela.
I think he's a billionaire. He doesn't care about money. He wants to help people more than anything.
So people need to understand that in the 1950s, the U.S. and the Venezuelans worked together to develop the industry of oil. So we need each other, essentially. So people forget that without the infrastructure, without the services, the work, the coordination, the friendship, the alliance between the people, even the government, the extraction of oil is impossible. So that's what people don't understand. And when communism takes control, all these services start failing. They don't seem to understand that, and they just seem to believe anything they hear on TikTok. Yeah, I mean, as a Venezuelan, that must be frustrating.
It's very hard. It's very hard just to think every day like we're hoping on a change of power, and if it's a 10 to 20 people that are very important and their military power, I totally support that.
Someone in Venezuela that says this, what could happen to them?
They could get, I've seen people that have gone to jail for tweeting like Americans come, like only for a tweet. You have to be very careful as a Venezuelan of what you say and where you say it. And if you're in the country, even more.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The people, United States, listen to me. War of Caribbean, war South America. No. Peace. Yes. Y es una tarea que les doy desde aquí a todas las fuerzas populares sociales, políticas, militares, policiales, a todas las fuerzas de la patria, a no caer en provocaciones en ningún momento, pero a movilizarse con fervor patriótico para decirle: fuera de aquí, barcos imperialistas, fuera de aquí, amenazas militares. Venezuela se respeta.
So the Trump administration just announced they're going to start attacking Venezuela by land under the charade of a drug problem, being a major drug source. This is exactly the charade we pulled off when we invaded Afghanistan and Iraq under false pretenses and left it completely unstable when there were actually other resources that we wanted. I cannot stress that this is exactly what's going on right now with your tax dollars and my tax dollars at a time when our economy is tanking. If this were about drugs, if this really were about the drug problem, we'd be attacking these countries first. Mexico dominates the smuggling of most illicit drugs across the southwest border. They are the primary source for fentanyl, meth, heroin, and a significant amount of cocaine to the U.S. Colombia remains the world's primary producer of cocaine, with sources indicating that 98% of the cocaine seized in the United States originates there. This cocaine is typically shipped through the Pacific or Caribbean and then moved through Central America and Mexico. Peru and Bolivia, these are the other two major source countries for coca production in the Andean regions used to make cocaine, though most of their products are consolidated through Colombia for the U.S. market. Central American nations, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and Belize, these countries serve as critical transit points for cocaine moving north from South America to Mexico. The Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. These Caribbean nations are major transit hubs for drugs, primarily cocaine, moving via the Caribbean corridor. China. While not a source for plant-based drugs, China is a major global source of precursor chemicals used by Mexican cartels to manufacture synthetic drugs like fentanyl and meth. And then Ecuador. Ecuador's coastlines are increasingly used as key departure points for drugs, especially cocaine, alongside Colombia. Venezuela. We finally reached fucking Venezuela on the list. It's primarily considered a significant transit country for cocaine originating in Colombia. However, U.S. government data indicates the majority of U.S.-bound cocaine, around 80%, moves via the Pacific corridor, largely bypassing Venezuela, making countries along that primary route, Colombia, Ecuador, Central America, Mexico, more significant in overall volume to the U.S. market. Let me tell you something else about Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, 300 billion barrels, even larger than the reserves in Saudi Arabia. The biggest donors to Donald Trump's presidency was big oil and all the LLCs and subsidiaries and so forth. Look it up. The ones that donated over $1 million have direct ties to the oil industry. Saudi Arabia cozying up with Donald Trump to get access to this oil in Venezuela by using your tax dollars and my tax dollars, and then pissing on us and telling us it's raining. In other words, it has to do with this drug problem they made up, is ludicrous. This is crazy. And we have madmen at the steering wheel, bypassing Congress and every other international law, and just going around killing anybody, and now we're going to invade their country. That's it.
As a Venezuelan living in the US, the only thing that I can do is talk about the truth of what I experience in my own country, part of the reason why I ended up leaving, and what is true, what is happening that most people don't even know. This isn't about being pro-Trump or anti-Trump or Republican or Democrat. It's not about that. It's about the reality of what we've been dealing with under a dictatorship, a regime that has been a narco-terrorist dictatorship, essentially, that has done so many horrible things. And listen, if I'm going to be honest with you, if I were an American citizen not knowing anything about what's happening in Venezuela, I would understand their nervousness that people feel under what's going on with Trump. However, as a Venezuelan citizen who does know what's happening, I feel like, please come and help, because this is out of our hands. A lot of people have asked me, but why haven't the Venezuelan people protested? Why aren't they in the streets trying to overthrow the government? The reality is that we've spent the last 26 years protesting in the streets and voting and doing everything that is in our hands to overthrow these people and gain control of the country again. But just to give you one small example, last year after the elections, which the opposition won, and they had the ballots to prove that they won, in 24 hours, almost 3,000 people were put in prison, including people that defended those ballots and that made copies of those ballots to prove that they had won. These people, some of them, nobody knows even anything about where they are. Others are basically in torture centers in Venezuela, and they don't have rights to a lawyer or anybody. Like, they're just thrown in jail. Even posting like messages or sending each other messages through WhatsApp, through private messages on your phone, is enough to land you in prison right now. So voting or taking the streets is not as simple. We've done that thousands and thousands of times over almost 30 years. The only way to bring these people down and to recover democracy and to recover justice and prosperity and peace is to have somebody else end this war. The war already started years ago. What we need is external force to help us end it. Ultimately, I don't know where this is going to end. I have no clue what's going to happen in Venezuela right now and where Trump is going to take this. But of course, I'm in favor of something ending this situation, or somebody ending this situation, because the pain that it has caused is beyond what I could even describe here. So I will continue sharing what I've seen in my country and what's going on, because most of the media isn't sharing the whole truth.
The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, the President of Peace, the President of an America First policy, is escalating tensions with the government of Venezuela by saying that their airspace should be closed given the nature of an imminent attack coming from the United States. Under international law, it is incomprehensible and it is illegal for one country to close the airspace of another country. The United States has given several reasons as to why they're taking these kinds of actions. They're doing it under the pretext of a narcotics operation. Now, it is important to notate that the United States has moved a lot of military assets to the region, including 15,000 U.S. Marines. This is very unusual for a narcotics operation. And look, I'm not going to make this video too long for you guys, but I am going to give you the tools so that you can understand how the United States is lying about the so-called narcotics operation in Venezuela. You're going to go to Google and you're going to type DEA Report 2025, and it will show the 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment from the Drug Enforcement Agency in the United States. And when you click that, you should see this. And then you're going to see a table of contents that's going to show a list of all the narcotics and the threat assessments to the United States. 6% of all of the narcotics that enter the United States go through Venezuela. And in that report, it is assessed that Venezuela is a transit country, not a producing country of any of these illegal narcotics. The top 3 producers of white powder that enters the United States are Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia. 90% of the fentanyl that enters the United States goes through Mexico, and it is produced in China. This is not a narcotics operation. This is an attempt at regime change because the United States lost political power over Venezuela's large oil economy 25 years ago when Chavez got elected president. This video is not to defend the government of Venezuela. It is just an objective observation about the lies the United States is willing to create for regime change in other countries. America First policy, the American President of Peace, weapons of mass destruction, narcotics operation in the Caribbean, Iraq 2003 large oil producing country, Venezuela 2025 largest oil reserves on the planet. I don't know, man. I'm going to say this saying that Americans say. They say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Salute.
Are we going to war against Venezuela?
I doubt it. I don't think so, but they've been treating us very badly, not only on drugs. They've dumped hundreds of thousands of people into our country that we didn't want. People from prisons, they emptied their prisons into our country. They also, if you take a look, they emptied their mental institutions and their insane asylums into the United States of America because Joe Biden was the worst president in the history of our country.
But I just want to talk about the scale of the military operation around Venezuela, because it has been described to 60 Minutes as using a blowtorch to cook an egg. Is this about stopping?
Well, I don't think so. Look.
Is it about, let me ask you though, is it about stopping narcotics, or is this about getting rid of President Maduro?
No, this is about many things. This is a country that allowed their prisons to be emptied into our country. To me, that would be almost number one, because we have other countries. Look, Mexico has been very bad to us in terms of drugs, okay? Very bad. We have a closed border right now. You probably noticed that for 5 months in a row, they have zero, think of this, zero people coming into our country through our southern border.
On Venezuela in particular, are Maduro's days as president numbered?
I would say, yeah. I think so, yeah.
And this issue of potential land strikes in Venezuela, is that true?
I don't tell you that. I mean, I'm not saying it's true or untrue, but I wouldn't.
Why would we
I wouldn't
do
be
it?
inclined to say that I would do that, but because I don't talk to a reporter about whether or not I'm going to strike.
I want to tell you exactly how most Venezuelans feel right now with everything that's going on between the U.S. government, Trump's policies against Maduro and the Venezuelan regime or government. I'm going to make this as simple as possible so that you guys understand it and there's no confusion. Number one, after 26 plus years of having this regime run over our country, basically destroy it, we want the regime taken out. We want to be free. And people are saying, well, why aren't Venezuelans doing something to take these people out? Imagine that the U.S. has right now the USS Gerald Ford, thousands of troops, planes, boats, all the different things, and they haven't been able to take them out. You think that we, who are unarmed and have tried every legal way possible to overturn the government, including legally winning the elections last year, you want us to take them out? How? Please give me exact instructions on how to do that, and then we'll talk. Number two, do we want to be invaded? Of course we don't want to be invaded. We don't want there to be any type of war. But what you need to understand is that our country has already been invaded by Cuba, by Russia, by China. For decades, they have done everything with our resources, and they have indoctrinized a lot of our people as well, and basically have stolen everything. Like, they have completely destroyed our country. So we are already invaded right now. Do we want to be invaded by the US? No, we don't really want to be invaded. What we want is for somebody to help us take out the regime, period. Are we pro-Trump? Not necessarily. It's a dual relationship, because obviously on one end, we finally feel like our voices are being heard. But on the other end, obviously, the immigration policies that Trump has against Venezuelans have been really tough as well. So there's a duality. We don't necessarily love Trump. We're definitely not against his policies of what's going on in the Caribbean right now. We trust Trump of, like, I don't know, being nice or trying to do this out of the kindness of his heart. I mean, listen, of course we're not idiots. We've been around the block for 26 years dealing with an authoritarian dictatorship, basically. So we're not dumb. But at this point, we're so desperate that we're going to take help from whoever wants to give it. And for the first time in 26 years, our regime, the people running our government, again, I quote because they're not legally, right? I just want to make that clear. They're scared for the very first time. There is a slight possibility that they might flee. And so, my friends, when you're dealing with a dictatorship who is torturing, disappearing people, destroying your country, you're going to be happy with people that are making them scared and the possibility of them fleeing the country. So that is my way of summarizing and simplifying what's going on without getting into like the emotions and heart of like whether we're left or right. It doesn't matter right now. This is the simplest explanation that I can give you with everything that's going on in Venezuela right now.
What's up, America? Donald Trump closes the airspace over Venezuela in anticipation of a ground attack. So it looks like this is ramping up quite quickly. Oh, by the way, people are calling for Pete Hegseth to be impeached as well. So we'll see how this all works out in the end, but it's looking like the United States military is poised to attack Venezuela, even though Donald Trump had a phone call with Nicolas Maduro, president of Venezuela. Apparently, they can't iron out their grievances. As you know, the entire country has been mobilized, and Nicolas Maduro has been dancing for peace in front of crowds. The Russian military was down there with several hundred soldiers and a general that was supposedly training people, and they said there might be hypersonic weapons on the way. So far, it doesn't look like that's coming. So everything's all ready to go. It looks like we're probably going to be striking Venezuela. We've been waiting quite a while to see any movement other than narco boats being blown up. And we've seen plenty of that shit. So now we'll find out what's going to happen coming up here. Looks like America's either planning to shit or get off the pot.
Is the United States officially at war with Venezuela? That is what you're asking, and boy, it does sure feel that way. But let's go ahead and break it down, because formally, no, we are not at war with Venezuela. But with what Donald Trump is saying and how it's being done, it sure looks like it. To read what Trump said, he says, quote, "To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety." Now, at this very moment on flight radar, there are still flights traveling in certain areas in Venezuela, but the bulk of it, we don't really see many at this time. We have not heard from the Pentagon at this time, but we are hearing from Venezuela that said that what's going on here, this is a colonialist threat and a violation of our sovereignty and international law, which is technically true. Another country can't close another country's airspace. That would be super illegal. The only time we ever see that is, well, Russia doing that to Ukraine, since Russia shoots down everything. While at the same time, if the United States plans on doing that, does that not make them, I guess, Russia in this scenario here? That aside, because we haven't heard any other U.S. government official talking about this, it seems like it was just one of those Donald Trump rants that he kind of did in the middle of the morning. So from this point of view, no, the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela. The other half of this is the U.S. striking boats in the Caribbean. Most recently, new reports came out about Pete Hegseth essentially saying to kill everyone on those boats, referring to the survivors after the last attack in which, yes, Pete Hegseth had ordered to do a double tap of a situation, or in this case, another boat that was exploded, he wanted to hit it again to make sure that there were no one left. And from that point of view, technically speaking, no, the U.S. is still not at war with Venezuela, though it's very bad looking, because at that rate, the U.S. is just striking things with no rhyme or reason, no legal standing, and then when there's people left over, they're kind of erasing the evidence by taking those people out. The bottom line is no. We're not actively at war with Venezuela, but I will tell you that every time the U.S. carries out yet another lethal strike on these boats, Venezuela, in a way, actually has a reason to respond to the United States, which could spark yet a larger conflict. The better question you should be asking yourself is why is the Trump administration attacking these boats in the Caribbean, yet pardoning an ex-president from Honduras who brought in millions and millions of dollars of cocaine into the United States? There's a lot that is going on, and a lot of things seem to be distractions. But the one thing we can look at right now is if the Trump administration doesn't stop now, this could escalate things into a full war with Venezuela. What would that look like? Could be U.S. targeted strikes inside, or even worse.
For those Americans who do not understand why we need to go in, Venezuela for the American oil companies will be a field day, because it will be more than $1 trillion in economic activity. American companies can go in and fix all the oil pipe, the whole oil rigs, and everything that has to do with the Venezuelan petroleum companies.
Since Representative Salazar wants to go on national news and blatantly advocate for sending U.S. troops to war with Venezuela for the sake of oil profits, I've done her the courtesy of printing off enlistment paperwork for her to fill out. Because speaking as the wife of an active duty service member, I'm pretty sure I speak for most military families when I say we aren't interested in Congress risking our loved ones' lives for the sake of big oil's bottom line. Y'all have already pulled that shit on us once before, and we aren't falling for it again. Especially since dog shit politicians like Representative Salazar can't even be bothered to make sure the service members that she sends to war are adequately cared for upon their return. I'm referring, of course, to Maria's vote against the PACT Act, which expanded healthcare for veterans of the global war on terror like my husband, who were exposed to egregious amounts of toxic chemicals while deployed. Ironic, isn't it, that she wants to send our men and women off to pointless wars, all in the name of oil, while also voting against healthcare for those same men and women when they start dying of cancer caused by the toxic chemicals in burning oil. Now, to be fair to Representative Salazar, I do recognize that at 64, she's well past the typical cutoff age for enlistment. But I checked, and Representative Salazar has not one, but two able-bodied daughters who are prime enlistment age. So I guess the question is, Maria, which one are you willing to sacrifice for the sake of big oil?
As Trump began firing off threats about taking action and not ruling out military options, Venezuelan-Americans collectively said, run that back. Now, for many families who escaped violence, instability, and authoritarian rule, the idea of any military escalation touches a very real fear because they've seen what that looks like up close. Some are terrified that an invasion would put loved ones at risk. Some fear the U.S. stirring up another global or rather regional conflict. Now, but because nothing is ever simple, there's also the other side. So a portion of Venezuelans, especially those who consider President Maduro a dictator, are thinking, honestly, maybe someone should step in. They are tired of, his long-term rule, fed up and desperate for political change. But wanting help doesn't automatically mean wanting a full U.S. invasion. Tanks rolling down Caracas or the U.S. military trying to build democracy the same way you assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. So, what does this mean for Trump, the no more wars president? Now, let's recall something. One of Trump's strongest campaign points, screamed loudly to the heavens, was that he was anti-war. He insisted America should focus on itself and stop policing the world. Great, cool, sounds peaceful, right? And now, suddenly, we're reenacting the early 2000s foreign policy playbook. So the real question becomes, does this new tough guy act mean he's abandoning his anti-war stance? Or is this just Trump being Trump, dramatic, unpredictable, and allergic to consistency? It puts him in a tricky spot politically. His base includes people who love a show of dominance, but also those who really genuinely believed he would avoid foreign wars. If he actually goes through with an invasion, he risks looking like every other war president he once criticized. If he doesn't, he risks looking weak after all the chest pounding. So yes, his political brand is not having the best week. So what does this mean for Venezuela and South America? Let's be real, South America is watching, stressed, clutching every rosary, good luck charm, and ancestral blessing they can find, right? Because historically, when the US or the United States starts talking aggressively about one Latin American country, the rest starts wondering who's next. The region has a long memory, especially with US interventions. If the US actually invaded Venezuela, you'd see massive instability in the region, refugee flows across borders, economies rattled, anti-American sentiment skyrocketed. Countries like Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Argentina, who, they would be forced to respond whether they want to or not. The political pressure would be huge and the diplomatic fallout are ever bigger. South America is already dealing with economic and political challenges. A conflict involving the US would be like throwing a match into a room full of gasoline fumes. But let's address the big question everyone's thinking. Is this about oil? Well, Venezuela does have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. And historically, the US has never been shy about defending democracy in countries that conveniently have oceans of oil beneath them. Now, I'm not saying Trump is invading Venezuela for the oil. I'm just saying if Venezuela's biggest export was mangoes, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. It raises eyebrows. A lot of them. And Venezuelans, both inside and outside the country, know exactly why the rest of the world is suspicious. So, what does all of this mean? It means we are heading into a tense political moment where Venezuelan-Americans are scared. South America is brazen. And Trump is playing a dangerous geopolitical game that could reshape his presidency and the entire region, if not the world entirely. Invading Venezuela wouldn't just be another headline. It would be a global shockwave. So, do you think Trump is serious about invading Venezuela, or is it just a political theater? Should the US intervene in countries with authoritarian leaders? At what point is it justified or not justified at all? If oil wasn't in the picture, would this situation be different? And what would an invasion mean for the people actually living in Venezuela? Tell me your thoughts on the comment section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comment section, because this one issue is where every perspective matters. I want to know what your thoughts are. So until next time, credit belongs to original creators. I'll see you guys in my next video.